Good morning, guys. My name's AJ. I'm one of the pastors here. Do I have anybody with siblings, maybe brothers in the room, where you would argue about who was taller? Anybody? Man, that was a common conversation in our household growing up. And it was great being the older brother, right? You're taller for a long time until you're not, right? This guy leading worship right here is my brother, Caleb. And I remember we would argue who was taller, and then all of a sudden the argument shifted from who's taller, AJ or Caleb, to Caleb or Daniel. And I was no longer a part of the conversation. I remember it distinctly and being like, oh man, like maybe I'll grow. And no, I'm 5'9" and stuck. You know, anyone else relate? By the way, it's average, okay? So the average height of an American man. Anyways, I remember we would have arguments all the time, but one of the funny things is, it's been funny, is that people now often think Caleb is older than me. Anyone want to raise your hand and be honest that you just figured that out? Anybody? I just had one of my interns come to me 3 weeks ago and, dude, I didn't know you were older than Caleb. I've known him for 6 years. And it can be frustrating. So anyways, I'm super secure in the relationship. I'm totally fine with it. Doesn't bother me at all. But we would grow up arguing about like who's better, MJ or LeBron. Any LeBron people, right? You're clearly wrong. Good. Thank you for not raising your hand. We would have these deep debates on who's greater, who's better. And the book of Hebrews seeks to settle that debate once and for all. And you will find that LeBron is better. No, I'm just kidding, not in there. But it talks and speaks to the superiority of Jesus over everything. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be going through this book, speaking clearly about Christ above everything. That he is greater and stronger and superior to every person and everything in all the world and all of creation. And so that's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. Here's our thesis. In a world obsessed with status and position, the book of Hebrews proclaims the absolute supremacy of Christ above all things and calls us to find our place in him. You see, our culture is obsessed with positioning ourselves status-wise above everybody else. It's so deeply ingrained into our psyche, we don't even notice it. In fact, I was doing research on marketing in the last 20 years, and there's been a huge shift. The top-selling brands traditionally were brands that marketed their quality. Said, hey, we are the best quality car, the best quality this, but there's been a shift. Does anybody know? What do they market now? Luxury. There's been a huge shift. The top selling brands now, it's all about selling luxury, which is a symbol of status and that you are, in a sense, above everybody else. You can afford the luxury. Right, get the luxury car. And I'll just show this. When I think luxury, I think Rolex, right? So here is an ad from a while ago in a magazine. It said, if you were climbing here tomorrow, and that is the top highest peak in Antarctica, you'd wear a Rolex. Over here it says, we built the Rolex Explorer because there isn't a watch repair shop on top of the Matterhorn. But look at the marketing today. Look at it today. It's all selling luxury, the ultimate symbol of luxury, Rolex watches and diamonds. I'm not here to hate on watches. If you want to give me a Rolex, I am okay with that, all right? My point being this is that it's so deeply ingrained in us, and it starts at a young age. Any elementary school teachers? Do you guys remember line leaders? You guys remember that? You got to lead the line, and you felt amazing, right? You're not doing jack squat, right? You're just, the leader's leading it, but you're front in the line, and everyone would clamor to do that. I remember we would all run to get there, right? You'd be waiting until that bell rang, and you would sprint to be first in line, right? Growing up in kids' church, they would get someone's help. One of the students, the greatest impact a student could have in kids' church was you could be the light warrior, and you could turn the light on and off. When it was time for worship, they were like, light warrior, go get the lights, and you'd run back there, and you'd be like, all right. And you'd run back, and you'd sit down, and you'd be like, yeah, I just did that, you know? You felt like a big stinking deal. Think about it this way. Like, by the way, if you tell a 5-year-old they're a warrior, they're going to take that real seriously, right? I can't think of a smaller amount of authority that goes to someone's head faster than flipping a light switch, right? That's a fairly easy thing. Yet, man, I remember whenever I got it, I was like, it made my week. We get car lifts, truck lifts, we get facelifts, we do all these things. What do we say when you have like a moral superior argument to somebody? We say you have the moral high ground. It is so deeply entrenched in our cultural zeitgeist that we literally don't even recognize it anymore. It's like breathing. The book of Hebrews just punches all that in the face. It just shatters it because we're trying to build this version of ourselves and supremacy of us above others. And then it just skyrockets Jesus just so much higher than all of that. And it says he is greater than everything. And so that's really what this is about. The theme to the series is Jesus over everything. There's 3 words I want you to get this morning. It says to put Jesus over everything in your life. The theologian, this amazing man named A.W. Tozer said this, famously said, what comes into our minds when we think about God is about us. What comes into your mind when you think about God is the single most important thing about you. And you might ask, wait, really, why is that? We're going to spend the rest of our time talking about it. This series has 2 themes. There's 2 things we want to do. One is we want to talk about how Jesus is greater than everything. Week 1, we're going to talk all about how Jesus is greater than the angels. Then week 2 is Moses, and then he's greater than the high priest, and then he's our greatest hope for change in week 4. That's what we're going to do. But the whole theme of the book is that Jesus is superior to everything. But then there's a second question we're going to ask. What does that mean for us in our position and orientation to him? So if Jesus is greater than everything, what does that mean for us and our positioning and orientation to him? You see, have you ever been to a wedding and you go to when the seating chart goes? And I don't, maybe you're like me or maybe I'm just broken, but I love going to a wedding and I want to be a high number. Why? Anyone know why? You're going to get to eat first, right? Like I'm looking at my proximity to the family. If my table is close to the family, I'm like, we're getting released first. This is awesome. And then I've been 32, where you show up and you're at 32 and you're like, oh, we're not eating till 7, you know? I think one of the most fascinating things, weddings are these incredible social experiences and experiments to me. Have you guys ever, and this has happened to me probably more than any of you by a lot, have you ever been sat at a table where you're like, I don't know you? And you're like, you don't know each other. And then you realize it hits you. We got put at the leftovers table. Anyone? Like they see everybody and they're just like 8 of you left and they're like, I don't know where. And they're doing rocket science and like, I don't know what we can do. And finally they just get fed up and they're like, you're together. And you sit down and you're like, hi, I'm Adrian. It's good to meet you. Do you know each other? No. And you're like, oh, 32, right? I think one of the other most interesting things is no one ever had to tell anyone this. This just became, it's so, again, so deeply ingrained in us. Have you seen a groomsman or a bride at the rehearsal? I've done tons of weddings now, and they tell everyone the order in which they're going to walk down. And everyone subconsciously is going, where am I in the order? I'll never forget, I was at a wedding where a guy said, hey, he looked at the groomsman and said, put me at the end, bro. I don't care. You don't even mean anything. No, I'm just kidding. He was just like, I know you're stressed about this, and so just put me there. I've noticed this thing that if you're secure in the relationship, then you're safe from offense often, right? I've been with people who are offended to be at that table with me. I'm like, hey, you're hanging out at the end. Let's get to know each other. And they're just like, I can't believe we have friends here. And I remember a couple talking to each other. I can't believe we're at this table. And I've had people call me and say, hey, I don't know where to put you. Nobody likes you. No, I got to figure out where to put you. And you know, I've done a lot of weddings where I don't know a ton of people. So they're like, hey, we want you to stay. Who would you want to sit with? And I just tell them, put me wherever. Because I think back to that dude because I said, hey, put me in the kitchen. I don't care. I'm just happy to be there to celebrate you, right? Like it's, and if you're secure in the relationship, then you're safe from offense and miscommunication. That's so true with us too, that all of our insecurities stem from a lack of security in our relationship with God. I truly believe this. And guys, we are the most insecure generation, that all those insecurities stem from a lack of truly understanding our position and orientation to God and to Christ. Because if you truly understood it, it would melt away all these things that we're trying so hard to position ourselves. So let's do that. Let's hop into week 1, which is Jesus over everything. We're going to be in Hebrews chapter 1 and 2, talking all about angels. That sound good? But we start off here in verse 1, chapter 1. It says this: long ago in a galaxy far, far away. I'm just kidding. Go to the real one. Long ago, at many times and many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. So the book of Hebrews is written by, we think Paul, we're not entirely sure, but it's written to the Jews, the Hebrews. And it's written to a group of people who have a low view of Jesus. So he's addressing something. And again, why that hits home, guys, is I think that in a scary, terrifying way is many of us, that we have a much lower view of Jesus than we care to admit or even fully recognize. So I think this book is perfect for this cultural moment we're in. As many of us, Jesus is our friend. He's our buddy. Man, we like him. We pull him out whenever we need him, but we put him back in his box later until we're in trouble. And I truly believe almost every solution to the problems in your life is elevating Christ in your life. This book is perfect for right now. And it says this: long ago and many times and many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in verse 2, everything switches. In these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom also he created the world. So I'm not very smart, so I get distracted easily. So I put all the things in yellow to help us understand what in the first few verses, how we're seeing the elevation, the superiority of Christ. And so you see the authors say, hey, listen, we used to get and hear from God from the prophets and in many other ways, but now we hear from God through his Son, who is the appointed heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. Look at verse 3. He's the radiance of his glory, the glory of God, the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. Guys, Jesus is a pretty big deal. A Hebrew was struggling to accept, still the Jews to this day do not accept Jesus as the Messiah. Some of them like him, he's a great teacher, but he's not their Lord. And so Hebrews is trying to smash that. And it says this, he's saying, this is how God used to speak to us, but now God spoke to us through his Son, who is the exact imprint of his nature, right? The radiance of his glory. We keep going in verse 4, it says this, so he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs. I know it's so hard to understand this culturally, but I need you to recognize how fundamentally insane that was for a Hebrew to hear. That Jesus, a man, was even more superior than the heavenly court. Guys, the heavenly court could be in God's presence and not die. But humanity could not. Think of that story again. Moses being in the presence of God, saw the back of his face, and his face shone so brightly that they had put a veil over it when he talked to everybody else. But God said to him, if you'll see me, you will die. Just as we continue, I'll build up this a little more, but Jesus being greater than the angels is so culturally we hit something in my brain that broke there. I apologize. It's so contrary to their culture that it's hard for them to wrap their heads around. Verse 5, for to which of the angels did God ever say, you are my son? Today I have become your father. Or again, I will be his father and he will be my son. And again, when God brings his firstborn into the world, he says, let all of God's angels worship him. Think about Christmas, right? When a heavenly court came and worshiped Jesus. Verse 7, and speaking of the angels, he says, he makes his angels spirits and his servants flames of fire. But about the son, he says, your throne, O God. He just called Jesus, O God. Again, think Trinity. We take that for granted, but that was a huge deal for them. Will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be the scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has set you above your companions, being the angels, by anointing you with the oil of joy. To which of the angels, is now verse 13, did God ever say, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet? You're starting to get this idea of Jesus being greater than the angels. He's really trying to drive that home, guys, that Jesus is greater than the angels. And I think to fully understand this, we have to get a frame of reference. We have to truly understand who the angels are. So I'll ask, anyone surf here? If you've ever surfed, ever brought someone who doesn't know how to surf, they're going to learn to surf out on a really good big day, right? And you're like, you're going to be okay. And you paddle out there and they almost drown. So that's me, okay? I'll just say this. I want you to imagine that if you were taking someone out and you said, hey, how good at surfing are you? And they said, hey, I'm better than AJ. That is not saying a lot, right? But if you don't know me, you have no frame of reference for my inability. Then you'd be like, well, I don't know. Maybe you're pretty good. I've gone surfing with so many of my friends, and they're so incredible, and it's like magical. And my entire goal is to just see my kids again the next day. Like, I'm trying not to drown. And they're like, this is awesome. And I'm like, I've inhaled and drank so much water, right? You can misunderstand someone's abilities. I remember my cousin Neil took me out there, and he's like, you've surfed before? And I was like, yeah, like 10 years ago, and went out there, and I lasted like 15 minutes and paddled in and sat on the beach. Like, this ain't worth it. I almost died. If you don't have a frame of reference, then it's hard to really understand whether someone's really good or not good at something. Because if you simply said, hey, I'm better than blank, well, you got to know, is blank good or not? Does that make sense? So let's fully kind of wrap our heads around angels and figure out what's all going on with angels. Have you ever wondered about angels? Have you ever sat and just read or thought and been like, yeah, like, I don't get them. Like, I know what they're doing. We see them do stuff, but like, rarely do I fully ever grasp what's going on with angels. In one of the weirdest verses in all the Bible is Hebrews 13:2, and it says this: do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Look at me really quick. Don't look at your neighbor. They might be an angel, okay? What a wild verse. We're like, hey, so be good to strangers, because that means the angels they could be here and amongst us and hanging out with us, and we could not know it. Just for the simple fact of building a frame of reference, there's two things you got to know about angels, okay? Here's the two jobs, the two purposes of angels are this. Angels are ministers and messengers to God's people. Angels are ministers and messengers to God's people. Look at you get in verse 14, the last verse of this chapter. It says, are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? They are ministering spirits. Guys, they're a huge deal. And just to drive this point home, I need you to understand that in Old Testament and with the Hebrews, angelic communication was the highest form of validation and verification. If an angel came and said something, you weren't like, I don't know if that was God or if I just ate something weird today, right? Like, what happened every time people saw angels? You guys know? They were afraid. The angels always had to say, hey, don't be afraid. So angels were the highest form of verification and validation. In fact, Galatians 3:19 says this: the law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator. Acts 7:53, and you who received the law that was given through angels, but have not obeyed it. Guys, angels were the ones, the messengers in which brought the Hebrews, the Jews, the law. As we're building out a frame of reference, it truly gets us to understand just how big of a deal when it says that Jesus is over angels. And we're going to pick it up, go back with me, Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1, and we're going to see how this all ties into us. But hopefully at this point, you understand. Jesus, greater than sign, angels. Verse 1, therefore, there's a shift. Therefore, we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. I've been in church a long time, guys. I was a light warrior, okay? I am struck by, and I don't know why this always feels like the place in which I'm writing messages. I don't know. But there's a heaviness in my soul, like not just in every fiber of my being, thinking about how many people once were here and no longer are and have drifted away. There's a heaviness in me as I think about some of my good friends that I now know who reject God and want nothing to do with him. And we see this warning. In fact, it's going to be even more in verse 3. He says, therefore, we must pay closer attention to what we've heard, lest we drift away from it. Verse 2, for since the message declared by angels proved to be reliable, simply saying this, that if you trusted angels, we then very much so must trust in Jesus, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution. How shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? Guys, there's two groups of people. There's groups of people who are drifting away from Jesus, and there's groups of people who are completely neglecting him. And I'm not under any sort of pretense to think that every single person in this room right now is a believer. And there's some of us who we are neglecting God. But man, there's a lot of us too. Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever felt drifting? Like when you go to church, you're like, something feels off. Like I used to feel this way. I used to feel so excited and wanting to get into worship and the word. And now I just find myself kind of, getting coffee, taking as long as I can in the lobby, getting in late, waiting for church to end. Oh my gosh, they're doing another song, having these thoughts and emotions. Like, John, you're still talking. Ever had that? Hopefully he's not in here. Didn't say that first service. Like when you open your Bible, you're like, it used to be so cool, but now I'm in Deuteronomy and what's happening, right? Ever found yourself, you used to love to listen to worship music, but now you just don't really anymore. And you find yourself drifting. And you're maybe going, I don't want to drift, but there's something in my heart. I find myself moving a direction I don't want to go. This might be one of the most important messages for you. Again, he says, therefore, we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. What is it? A great salvation, like it says in verse 3. Jesus is not only a greater messenger, he is the living embodiment of the message. When it's talking about it, drifting away from it, the greatest form of validation and verification in the Old Testament was the angels. And it says Jesus is greater than the angels, right? And it says that John 1:1 says this, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Right? He is not just the greater messenger. He is the living embodiment of the message himself. Jump back to me with the thesis. It says, in a world obsessed with status and position, the book of Hebrews proclaims the absolute supremacy of Christ above all things. And this is what I want to focus on. And it calls us to find our place in him. So what's our position in all this? If Jesus is greater than the angels, where are you and I? Let's read verse 5. It is not to the angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. But there is a place where someone has said, and it's speaking of Psalms 8, 4-6, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, a son of man that you care for them? You made them a little lower than the angels. What? You made them a little lower than angels. Where are we? I have some bad news. We're lower than the angels. Jesus is greater than angels, and angels are greater than humanity. So as we're orienting ourselves, we're going, okay, where are we in all this? And we kind of get some bummer news. As humans, we're below the angels. But that's not where the story ends. And the thing that breaks my heart is for so many of us is that when we relate to Jesus, there's such a gap of relationship. It's almost like the president, right? Like you don't probably talk to the president very often. Now, you might be under the authority of the government, but you and the president don't have a relationship. And I feel like for so many of us, it's like we know God and we agree with God and all that stuff up there, but there's such a lack of depth of a relationship. And many people, we only ever get this far with this big gap between us and Jesus. And you agree with it, you like it, you know it, but man, he's so distant and way out there. But that's not really where the story ends. If you're trying to think, man, why have I drifted? Or maybe why do I miss it entirely? Maybe it's because you don't have a genuine, authentic, true, intimate relationship with Jesus. Look what it says in verse 7 as we continue. It says this, you made them a little lower than the angels, but there's this big shift. All of a sudden, it says you crowned them with glory and honor. Wait, what? The angels? No, you. And he put everything under there, being humanity's feet. In putting everything under them, God left nothing that is not subjected to them. What? Yet at present, we do not see everything subjected to them. Wait, I thought we just established that we were brought and made a little lower than the angels. And in our humanity, we absolutely are. It goes even farther. It blows my mind. It says this in 1 Corinthians 6:3. It says, do you not know that we will judge angels? I thought that's a contradiction because we just saw that humanity is below the angels. How much more the things of this life? In Ephesians 3:10, this is one of the craziest verses in the Bible. It says this, his intent was that now, through the church, you and I, genuine believers, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known through the rulers and authorities of the heavenly places. Guys, this is crazy. This means that you and I, the church, and how Jesus interacts with you and I is the wisdom of that and the understanding of that is being made known to the angels. So I'm confused, AJ. I'm getting mixed signals. One, I'm hearing I'm below the angels, but then right in the same verse, he crowns us with glory. How? Go back to verse 9 with me. It says this, but we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while. Wait, what? Jesus is made lower than the angels? Now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. What does it mean when Jesus was lower than the angels for a little while? When he became a person, when he became man, the incarnation, Christmas. And so simply this is that through Christmas, we have Jesus coming down, being human, becoming a person. And it doesn't stop there. The word became flesh. We keep going in verse 9. Again, going back to the verse, it says that now crowned with glory and honor, he suffered death so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. Guys, as we're realizing that Jesus over everything, I want to remind us that Jesus is over death, right? He's over death. He's conquered death. And he says that in him, you are more than conquerors. And so I'm struck this morning, and every time I've read this and every time I'll ever preach this, by just how incredibly superior and incredible God is. And how far in my humanity I am from God. And yet through, I just jumped my points. Let's go to verse 10. Leave you as a cliffhanger. In verse 10, in bringing many sons and daughters to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through what he suffered. What did he suffer? Death on the cross. How is Jesus our pioneer? He became human so he might pay the sins of humanity, paving the way for us. In the next verse, both the one who makes people holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. Hey, where are we in all this? We are first and foremost and forever part of the family. Guys, and I know that this is just church and I'm just some punk preacher. It's my new band name. But like, do you ever just get stuck by the fact that we have been invited to be part of the family? If you ever feel yourself drifting, think about this, that Jesus died for you and didn't just save you, but he said, hey, come. What does he say? He says, I am not afraid to call you brothers and sisters. Man, we are first and foremost and forever part of the family. Look at verse 12. He says, I will declare your name to my brothers and sisters in the assembly. I will sing your praises again and again. I will put my trust in him. And again, he says, here I am, the children God has given me. Verse 14, since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity so that by his death, he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who all their lives held in slavery by the fear of death. Here's the last slide in this whole thing. Jesus comes down in Christmas, but he takes humanity. Those of us who are believers, through the cross, we get to go back up to where he is. He calls you brothers and sisters. Man, it just blows my mind that in heaven, he's not going to be like, hey, slave, I saved your butt. He's not going to do that. He's going to be like, my brother, my sister. Are we going to be taller than Jesus? I don't know. I hope. But it says this in verse 16, for surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. Who are Abraham's descendants? Us, and certainly the Hebrews who are reading this. Hebrews 17, for this reason he had to be made like them, fully human in every way. He came down to humanity in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. I want to end with this, with that question from the quote. A.W. Tozer, he asked this, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us? And if that's true, do you have a low view of Jesus? Because you will not even begin to understand the havoc that can reap in your life. And you have all these insecurities and all these things that you're like just clamoring for. If I could just get that marriage, if I could just get this amount of money saved, if I could just accomplish this thing, then I'll finally have that peace I so deeply long for. If we could just work out this problem, if this sickness would just go away. But here's the thing. It can all be fixed by elevating your view of Jesus in your life. We ask ourselves, God called us to find our place in him. What position do we have in all this? We are first and foremost and forever a part of the family, and that should never get old. If you find yourself drifting from a relationship with Jesus, ask yourself, why is the fact that he's invited you to be part of his family starting to get old in your life? Because if you truly sit and you look at Jesus for who he is, how you see him, and he's elevated that high, and you just see that forever and forever he's above where you could ever be, but yet he comes down, gets you, and takes you back up there and calls you part of the family. He says, brother, sister. I cannot help but be perpetually grateful and thankful. It's hard to feel distant and far from God when you're sitting and looking at this verse and realizing, man, he is above everything. Go back with me to verse 1 of chapter 2. It says this: we must pay the most careful attention, which means that there was a problem of people who were not paying attention. They were missing it. That we do not drift away. In verse 3, it says this: how shall we escape if we ignore such a great salvation? Are you ignoring the salvation of Jesus Christ, the relationship he wants to have with you today? Is that just something you're like, maybe I'll tap into that one day? Or have you realized the sacrifice truly for what it is? Something that drives you crazy is I'll pray with someone. They'll say, hey, I want to invite Jesus into my heart. And I'll pray with them. And not that this is a perfect science, but I'll pray. And if they're finished and they... rarely ever do they just go, hey, thanks, man. It was cool. That was cool, man. Thanks. Almost always, it results in tears. It results in them just fully realizing, because they see the weight of their sin. They see the disparity between them and God, and yet God came down. And so when you invite Jesus in your heart, it wrecks you. It moves you to joy and emotion because you just can't help but be moved by what God did for you. Look at this warning. How do people miss and drift away from salvation? Is they miss the gospel when it no longer satisfies them. It's I want God plus this. The gospel's good. I want Jesus to save me, but I need that plus I need this type of relationship, or I need this type of wealth, or this type of purpose and popularity, these types of friends. And so we find ourselves, and all it flushes itself out is insecurity. Positioning and posturing and trying to get above others so we can feel satisfied in our hearts, and you have lost the satisfaction of all satisfaction, which is the gospel. What more do we need, church? Jesus loved you and died for you. Well, I could get sick and drop dead right now, and I'd forever perpetually be blessed in eternity with God. And yet, some of us are no longer satisfied, and so we waltz into worship in church just okay with giving it whatever our drifting heart has. Look at Romans 1:21. It scares the absolute crap out of me. For although they knew God, which means either two things, that they knew God or they knew of God, like that they knew that God was God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking was futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. If you're trying to just sum up, I know I've said so many weird things and we talked about angels and what the heck. If I could sum everything up as this: how do we position ourselves with God as eternally grateful sons and daughters? We're part of the family, fully satisfied because we put Jesus above everything. Whatever that sports is, whatever that thing is, God's above that. God's greater than that. Whatever that insecurity is that you're lacking, you say, but God in me is greater than that. And what it does is it melts away all those things. Have you found yourself drifting? Maybe it's because to you, the gospel no longer satisfies. So in your futile thinking, your heart has become darkened as you seek the satisfaction from the world, trying to position yourself above others. It is a rat race that has no end, and you never will arrive at satisfaction. But the deepest of all joys and the deepest of all satisfactions is available to you, and it's free. You just have to start a genuine, authentic relationship with him. And so maybe if you're not a believer today, we're gonna have a team over here. Just go over to them and say, I want to give my life to the Lord. But I think there's a big chunk of us too, where we feel mission drift in our heart. And I just want to ask you, how come the gospel doesn't satisfy you like it used to? What more do you need and require? Or have you got a low view of the gospel? But if you bring that thing up to where it's superior and greater than everything, and the biggest, most important thing that ever could or would and will ever happen in your life, it starts to put these other problems, these other insecurities, and it melts it away. Will you guys stand with me? So in Romans, it talks about people who knew God and they did not glorify him and they were not thankful. And so worship, I think, is this awesome, beautiful way where we get to glorify God and we get to appreciate and do something physically to communicate our deep gratitude. And so that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna end with this. We have a ministry team over here who would love to pray for you. At any point during these songs, go over and get prayer. But I wanna jump right in because I'm just really grateful and I wanna glorify God. And so there's a ton of ways you can do that. You can read the Bible, you can serve others, but what is before you right now is an opportunity to worship him for what he truly deserves with a grateful heart and to glorify him. So I'm gonna pray, and when we're done, if you wanna do that, I just wanna invite you to come forward and fill the front and worship him because he deserves it. If you feel like you're drifting in your heart, maybe come forward to the front, do something, go get prayer. I don't know what it is, but take action to communicate deep, deep, deep satisfaction in the gospel. Would you pray with me? Dear Jesus, we are satisfied. We need no else, Lord. If we never got another blessing from you, if we never got another dollar, another relationship, Lord, it would be enough because we are satisfied with your gospel. It is enough for us. We need no more. And so we come, Lord, lifting you way up to where you deserve, superior above everything else in our life. And we say, Lord, we are grateful and be glorified. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Come forward if you want to worship.
Guys, thanks so much for checking out the Grove Church YouTube channel. We pray this channel is a great resource for you to know God and to make him known to the people around you. But even more, we would love for you to be in person with us here on Sundays. So if you go to our website at sdgrove.org, you can find out more about us and check out our service times. Also, stay in tune with everything happening at the Grove. Click on that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss doing church with us here live on Sunday mornings when you can't make it in person. And if you enjoyed that message that you heard today and it blessed you, click on that message playlist button that's on your screen right now to view all of our previous messages that will help you grow in your faith so much. God bless you guys and have a great week.